Alright, this is the oral exam for the Pacific Islander American experience, and not gonna lie, it feels kind of weird talking to a camera with no one else around, but just bear with me here. Alright, first question. The idea that the Polynesian Triangle was to describe the geographical area of the Pacific Ocean in which the peoples, cultures, and languages are similar. Today, many Pacific scholars say the Polynesian Triangle has expanded, with the United States at the apex of the triangle, New Zealand and Australia as the two right triangles. How has this transnationalism influenced this ideological geographic boundary? Alright, so the first thing that comes to mind regarding the expansion of the Polynesian Triangle is the spreading of skills and culture, which comes with migration here. I think the United States becomes a part of the Polynesian Triangle more the culture can be respectfully learned and portrayed, which in turn will promote more diversity in the country. That diversity in the United States aids in providing a place for the Pacific Islanders to practice their culture on the mainland, and that brings a connection to the rest of the Pacific, which the author expressed the importance of moving away from the dominant Western discourse of the Pacific as a barrier, so having the islands here in the West can really help with that. Alright, second question is, in our course reading, Can We Become Tongan Without Speaking Tongan? The author claims that the Tongan language is endangered. Why is this, and what did the authors suggest for revitalization? Alright, so the reason that the Tongan language is becoming endangered is because Tongan was not considered to be much worth to the newer generation. They had an understanding that English was a language of more opportunities and could give them better education or a better life, and so just less and less people felt the need to learn Tongan, which was the language of their ancestors, and it's especially important right now for this generation to learn the language, or there won't be enough people to carry on the language and it'll become extinct. So just the biggest thing is just to learn it. You don't have to have a mindset of, oh, I can either learn Tongan or I can learn English. You can just learn both, I guess. That's the best suggestion to keep the Tongan language going. Alright, number 3. Identify for Pacific Islanders play an enormous role in daily experiences. Referring to a few of the course readings, what are some of the many U.S. immigrant and U.S. Pacific Islanders negotiate, sustain, and maintain their island heritage? So the biggest one that I can think of was their representation of tattoos in their meeting. The reading that talked about tattoos and rituals remained as I mentioned a particular tattoo called the sign of elsewhere, and to the bearer of this tattoo, it means they're still connected to where they came from and remind them of belonging, meaning, and identity. No matter how far you travel during immigration, just when you look down at the tattoo, it can immediately bring you back to where you came from and remind you of the heritage and the meanings and everything else that comes along with it. This same article talked about the use of kava and in like the rituals, and that's another way they can continue to experience their Polynesian culture here on the mainland. Which brings us right into our next question. Kava is an essential ritual throughout the indigenous Pacific. What are some of the controversies around kava use? Are there different purposes for using kava among Pacific Islanders that deter from traditional protocols? Are there different uses in Western cultures than in Pacific cultures? So one of the biggest things that I found, at least, was the discussion on whether it can be considered a drug or some type of alcohol, and just because of the effects it has on relaxing and like mind clearing and kind of bringing you away for like a little bit and kind of get like bringing up sensations in your body, and people have compared that to the use of like drugs or alcohol. There's definitely a time and place for kava. It's an important part of their culture, and it's performed still in like rituals, or special social events, and other places where where it has had a huge history of being part of culture. A time that I personally consider to be not as appropriate is for recreational use that doesn't stay true to the meaning found in the culture and where it came from. Like if you're just going out and doing it for fun, but not actually kind of following the original guidelines that were in the ritual, then I'd consider that not an appropriate time to use kava. Kava bars are opening around the mainland of the United States, and I consider this to be more recreational use rather than the true cultural use of where it came from. So that's the way that the Western culture has kind of grabbed it and kind of used it in their own way. Alright, number 5. With the emergence of American urban cultures such as hip-hop and R&B among Pacific Islanders, many would say that there is culture appropriation in regards to African American culture. What is your perspective on this, and how do the course readings inform your perspective? I agree that there is some culture appropriation that Pacific Islanders are getting into African American culture. I'm drawing from the reading about the Tongan language when I say that there is importance for cultures to carry on their own traditions before they seem to vanish. In the case of that reading, it was the language that was going to be vanished if the culture wasn't practiced. I think it can be educational and eye-opening to learn about other cultures, so long as it doesn't come at the expense of your own culture. So if you're going to go out and engage and participate, in this case, African American culture, I think it's really important that you still maintain the Polynesian culture that's your own, that before you just completely kind of push that off to the side to migrate over to a different culture, I guess.